Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to pull back the curtain on a secret that links a quiet scientist at Bell Labs, the high-stakes tables of Las Vegas, and, believe it or not, some of the most successful investors in history. And it all boils down to a single, elegant formula.
Right, and it starts with a question that every single one of us has faced. You found what you think is a winning idea. So now what? How much money do you actually risk on it?
Seriously, think about it. You've done the homework, you're feeling confident, you feel like you've got a real edge, so how much of your capital do you put on the line? Go in small? Bet the farm? How do you even begin to decide? If you bet too little, you know you're leaving money on the table. But if you bet too big, one bad break could completely wipe you out. That is the question. It's the most important decision you make after you found that edge. And the answer, and this is the crazy part, has absolutely nothing to do with Wall Street.
Yeah, you'd think the secret to bet sizing would come from some legendary trader, right? A Wall Street tycoon. But no, the real answer came out of Bell Labs back in the 1950s. You know, the place that gave us the transistor. It was discovered by a physicist who was trying to solve a totally different puzzle. How do you get a clean signal over a noisy telephone wire?
And this is the answer he found: the Kelly Criterion. In its most basic form, the formula is just your edge, so your advantage, divided by the odds you're being offered. And what it spits out is incredible. It tells you the exact percentage of your money to bet to get the fastest possible long-term growth. I don't mean just a good growth rate. I mean the mathematically proven absolute fastest way to grow your wealth.
Okay, hold on. Are you saying that the speed at which you can grow money is literally the same as the speed of information? That was John Kelly's stroke of genius. He made a direct connection between growing your bankroll and Claude Shannon's famous information theory. Basically, the better your information, your edge, the faster you can literally transmit that knowledge into profit. It's this beautiful, almost poetic link between knowing something and earning from it.
Wow. Okay. The theory is pretty mind-blowing. But I have to ask, did anyone actually use this? Does it work in the real world with real money on the line? Oh, it works. And its first real test wasn't the stock market. It was the blackjack tables of Las Vegas.
You got it. A math professor named Ed Thorp stumbled upon Kelly's paper and had this light bulb moment. He realized it was the missing ingredient for his card counting system. So he took the formula to Vegas, pretty much cleaned up, wrote the legendary book Beat the Dealer, and then he turned his attention to what he called the biggest casino in the world, Wall Street, and he founded one of the first ever quantitative hedge funds.
Whoa. 150%? So you're saying he bet all of the fund's money and then borrowed another half of that and put it all on one single thing? That just sounds completely reckless.
It sounds reckless to us, but that's what the pure Kelly philosophy tells you to do when your edge is gigantic and you're almost certain you're going to win. The whole idea is to be incredibly aggressive when the odds are stacked way in your favor. And for Ed Thorp in that moment, it paid off big time.
And Thorp wasn't the only one putting this to work. The guy who started it all, the father of information theory, Claude Shannon, turns out he was a fantastic investor himself. He quietly managed his own money for decades, and his average annual return was, well, 28%.
28%? Okay, let's put that into perspective for a second. Over roughly the same time frame, Warren Buffett, probably the greatest investor who ever lived, averaged 27%. So you're telling me this Bell Labs scientist actually beat Buffett?
Just by a little bit, yeah. But it just goes to show you the unbelievable power of having a mathematical framework for how you size your bets.
All right, expert, you had to know this was coming. This sounds way too good to be true. The fastest growth, beating Warren Buffett, there has to be a catch, right? What's the dark side of all this?
You're right to be skeptical. There is a very, very big catch, because the optimal path is anything but a smooth ride. As the book Fortune's Formula puts it, it's a jagged mountain range.
So take a look at this. This chart shows what it's really like to follow the formula perfectly, what we call full Kelly. And the statistics are just brutal. You have a 50-50 chance, a coin flip, of watching your portfolio get cut in half before you ever see it double. A coin flip's chance of losing half my money? I don't think I could sleep at night. My stomach just couldn't handle that kind of volatility. That's terrifying. And you're not alone. Ed Thorp himself, the guy who used it to make a fortune, completely agrees with you. He always warned people never to overbet, that is, never bet more than Kelly says, but he also cautioned that just surviving the emotional roller coaster of betting the full Kelly amount is incredibly difficult. Knowing the right number is one thing. Being able to live through the journey is something else entirely.
So what happens when people don't listen to that warning? When you get a bunch of super smart people in a room who think they're tough enough to handle the risk? Well, when that happens, you get a disaster like long-term capital management. This was a hedge fund literally run by Nobel Prize winners, the smartest guys in the room. And they famously imploded in 1998, almost taking the entire global financial system down with them. Why? At its heart, it was a classic story of overbetting.
See, their genius was in finding these tiny, almost imperceptible pricing differences in the bond markets. They had a small, reliable edge. But the edge was so small that the only way to make real money was to use an insane amount of leverage. We're talking borrowing $30 for every $1 of their own capital. Their fancy models said this was fine, but they never accounted for a true black swan event, like Russia suddenly defaulting on its debt. And when the unthinkable happened, their massively over-leveraged positions didn't just lose money, they blew up the entire firm.
Okay, so betting the full Kelly amount is just too wild for most human beings, and overbetting is a recipe for complete disaster. So is there a way to actually use this powerful idea safely? Is there a way to tame this beast? Yes, there is, and it's a beautifully simple solution that pretty much every successful practitioner uses today. It's a concept called fractional Kelly.
The idea couldn't be simpler. You run the numbers, you calculate the full optimal Kelly bet, and then you deliberately bet less than that. So a really common strategy is half Kelly. You figure out the perfect bet size, and you just consistently bet half of that amount. Or maybe a quarter. You pick a fraction that lets you sleep at night.
But doesn't that just kill your returns? If you're betting half as much, aren't you just making half as much? That's the counterintuitive magic of it. It's not a one-for-one trade-off at all. It's an amazing deal. Look at this. When you cut your bet size in half, going from full Kelly to half Kelly, you only give up about a quarter of your maximum potential growth. So you still get 75% of the optimal return, but you absolutely slash the volatility. That coin flip chance of losing half your money, it drops from 50% all the way down to around 11%. It's an incredible trade-off.
I think this quote just nails it perfectly. The Kelly Criterion draws the bright, clear line between aggressive investing and insane investing. Betting anything more than Kelly is, by definition, insane. But betting a fraction of Kelly, that's the sweet spot. That's aggressive, smart, rational investing. It keeps you firmly on the right side of that line. So this whole story isn't really just about math nerds and gamblers. There are some really solid lessons here that pretty much any investor can use to build their own strategy. That's exactly right. Let's boil this all down into a few key takeaways you can actually use. First and foremost, how much you bet, your position sizing, is arguably more important than what you choose to bet on. Second, be brutally honest and humble about how big your edge really is. It's so easy to get overconfident, and that's what leads to overbetting.
Right.
Which brings us to using that fractional mindset. Deliberately dial back your bet size to reduce your risk and keep your emotions in check. And the LTCM story is a permanent reminder. Stay away from excessive leverage. It's the weapon that turns small errors into fatal ones. Exactly. And the last point is to change your focus. Stop thinking about the next big win and start thinking about maximizing your long-term growth rate. That is the real secret to compounding wealth over a lifetime. So in the end, the Kelly formula gives you more than just a number. It gives you a map of the territory. It shows you the absolute fastest, most direct route to growing your wealth. But it also puts up giant warning signs showing you just how dangerous that path can be.
The formula shows you how to get to the top of the mountain, but it doesn't force you to scale the steepest cliff face. It leaves you with a critical choice. Do you take the fastest, most treacherous path, or a slightly slower one that you know you can survive to the end? Which path will you choose?